So you've looked at the saddle, you've looked at the horse, you've looked at the rider.
Yes, and now we put the saddle on.
Okay. And now what are the points, and hopefully we're giving owners, riders, things to look at now as well. What should they be looking at for the saddle sitting on the horse?
Okay, so you pop the saddle on the horse, and then the first thing you check is you've got the saddle in the correct position.
And this is
again, surprisingly challenging.
Yeah, okay.
So,
and again, in a country, I think that a lot of the time, the grooms who are tacking up, like overseas, we would be the grooms. But in this country, we often leave it up to staff that we haven't necessarily educated.
Yes.
And then we assume that they've put, I don't know why we would do that, but, we go, well, I'm sitting in the saddle where they put it.
You've got a fluffy, multicolored unicorn rainbow numnah, and you've got this pad on underneath, and you've got that
martingale and attachment
and breastplate, and all of that. So you don't really necessarily look.
See the saddle fits us, we're like, oh my God, we have to take so much off. Okay. No.
As the dressage rider, when I ride my jumping horses, and I've got to detach everything.
Yeah, all the 5 points, 5-point martingales. Okay.
So fundamentally, what you do is there's two, I think, quick ways to do. One, if you look where the point of the tree is, there's a little pocket, and you can actually see where the point of the tree or the gullet is inserting. That must be behind the shoulder, and you can feel your way around the edge of the scapula and check that is sitting behind.
And that would be in both in any kind of saddle.
Yes. Point of tree.
Even if for the jumping saddle, you say the flap would go forward still. Okay.
The other quick cheat check is a hand behind the elbow before your girth starts. Okay. And again, obviously, there's lots of more modern girth that loop and twist and
different angle shoulders.
Yeah.
And
okay.
But that's a rough guide.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you put your saddle on, and generally, when you slide a saddle on, you'll feel it almost lock in, that it settles in behind.
Yeah. Okay, and that's the spot. Okay, so now the saddle's sitting there. It's behind the shoulder, behind the elbow.
Yes.
What's the next thing people should look for?
So I think we start at the front.
Oh yeah, I was going to say wither clearance, both fingers and the side. A lot of us, I think, tend to forget.
So not just the top. You're talking about around the wither. There should be space.
Can you put your fingers all the way through? Because
of course, if they're turning, makes sense.
If you're turning sharp, and asking them to, even with dressage, asking them to really come up and do this maneuver, you need the space.
Okay.
Yeah. Then
and again,
how much should it go through?
That's a little bit. How long is a piece of string?
No, totally.
So if you weigh 95 kgs and you get on the saddle, you're going to drop it more than a person who weighs 20. So this is where
the rider's weight comes in.
This is why it's important to have the rider there.
Okay.
The regular rider.
The regular rider. And even like if your horse is being ridden by a work rider twice a week, to have them there as well.
Correct.
Again, it's a team effort. It's a holistic approach always.
Oh, totally. Okay. Out of interest, like in that situation, do you fit the saddle to I don't want to say the weakest rider, but do you
are the weakest link, goodbye.
Well, you're the weakest link, hello.
In terms of weight, you fit it to
you fit it more towards the head.
To the heavier one.
Okay.
Because the lighter one won't do as much
compression
correct.
Okay.
But again, there's a vast difference between if, let's say, you are a 6'4" man and your 5-year-old daughter rides the horse.
No, of course.
There's going to be a lot of disparity there.
Okay.
So I think the clearance first.
Clearance down the side.
When you say the side, like where the shoulder goes?
No, either side of the wither. So a lot of the time you might, let's say, have 2 fingers above the wither. Trying to not just
Siobhan said earlier, this part sits behind the shoulder.
Yeah.
Right? Once that is sitting behind, generally the front part of the saddle, where your knee sits, particularly with the jumping, should be mobile.
Okay.
So
we want to check this part. Can I put my fingers underneath? Can I get it down? Is there enough? And the saddle needs to sit somewhere. It's not a floating saddle.
Okay, so it's not going to
coming soon.
be detached. A hover saddle.
Hover saddle.
It's going to be a Tesla.
Yeah. I mean, Tesla, as if riding sport wasn't unaffordable enough. And then the whole way down the gullet.
Okay, so let's jump back one.
Okay.
So we'll look at the saddle a little bit externally.
Okay.
Before we start feeling.
Okay.
Look at the external process, Georgina. Before you
I just jump in for the feel. Go.
Don't jump in for the feel, Georgina.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. So we look at the balance of the saddle.
Okay.
So, i.e., does your saddle tip to the back? Does your saddle tip to the front?
Okay.
So
is it going to put the rider in a
chair position?
Okay.
So there are two aspects to that, and I think one of the aspects is the balance of the saddle, pommel to cantle, and then the next aspect is where the seat is in the saddle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you might have a perfect pommel to cantle balance, but the rider's seat is going to be dipped to the back.
In the back, okay.
And then
Great
obviously,
example is dressage. Your dressage saddles are naturally higher.
Yes.
At the back
Okay.
false cantle.
Versus jumping. So if you're wanting to get the perfect balance for your pommel,
You're going to fall over the fronts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think if we move on to length, and again, this is slightly a contentious issue. The fundamental is it's got to sit in front of the last rib, T18.
Okay.
There are fitters who prefer T16 because they feel there's an inference as you get closer to the lumbar spine. And there is a degree where
okay.
part of...
Because it depends again on the horse, partly.
Yeah. So fundamentally, in part of the muscles, they change into fascia at that point.
Okay.
And that's where you can get like pressing in. And obviously, if you get pressing into the gluteal muscles and the gluteal muscles almost start there,
have a great
you're going to
time.
impinge the hind legs.
Okay.
And then you're not going to get the hind legs coming through.
Yeah.
And obviously, you need hind legs to make a horse go forward.
Or a vuvuzela, I'm just saying. Okay. So behind the shoulder, T16 to T18,
Yes.
depending on...
And then you start looking at the angle of the tree in relation to the angle of the horse's shoulder. So again,
Big one, yeah.
Okay.
if your horse's shoulder is like that and you put this on, it's going to push. If your horse's shoulder is like that and you put this on, it's going to sit. So your shoulder angle
Okay.
and your gullet angle,
Okay.
tree angle, should look vaguely similar at least.
Okay. So this is where people might say, I'm sure I can change the gullet, and
Yes.
if it's a fundamentally...
The biggest one for me is when people say, I can change the gullet because you're sitting into the back or sitting into the front. But the biggest problem is you're then changing this. This, for me, this is probably just as important as if you're sitting, if your saddle is out. Why is it out? Do we have to change the model of your saddle, the make, the size, the style?
I suppose it's like, you listen to high performance human athletes talk about their shoes and how they pronate and anti-pronate. And it's not to say that a brand's good or bad. No. It just doesn't work for them because of their biomechanics.
100% for the combination.
And then one of the next things we do is we feel under the panel to feel that there is an evenness of pressure. So we do literally at the shoulder from the top down, and then holding the saddle at the bottom, we do from the front of the panel, we do like a wave round. Like
and there should just be an even, that's where you're dispersing all the weight, right? So that should be equal.
Yeah.
Don't roll your eyes.
You don't want to go up and do that, and then, there's a gap.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want that even.
Smooth, okay.
You want a smooth feel. Fundamentally, the weight is distributed in the saddle and the pressure is slightly different. But I think one of the fundamentals, and I think we both agree on this, is you need clearance of the spine on either side. And a large issue that...
Not just on top. You're talking about under where you sit, not just the wither.
The panels must sit on either side of the spine. And I think that's a fundamental issue that we find in a lot of saddles. You've got
and more old-fashioned saddles, generally speaking, or is it... Am I going to get you guys into trouble? You can't get fired. You fired yourself.
My mother will still go to me, Georgie. Hi, Mom. Love you.
Okay, so people have to check, and again, depending on the horse and the breed and the conformation and the work. Okay.
I think coming back to the vertebrae, everyone thinks that that is an okay size. You've got to remember you've got all the attachments that come with it.
Okay.
So to go, I've got 2 fingers all the way through is perfect. I don't need more. Yep. But you actually need, my hands are quite small, so I use my entire palm.
Okay.
Then I know that I'm covering ligaments, attachments, muscle attachments, etc. And I'm really not being quite close.
And that's the thing. The spine doesn't necessarily, as you've seen from the vertebra we've shown, narrow as you go down it.
No, that's really interesting. And I think it's...
And the big thing I find, particularly in like the modern warm blood sport types, but also the boerpad, the nooitgedacht,
the heavier ones,
if you run your hand down their wither, you'll feel as you get to the base of the wither, which is generally speaking the narrowest part of most saddles, most horses actually expand.
I was just going to say that, and especially those boer pats, they flatten out. Yeah.
And if a saddle is not designed to encompass that, you're going to create an impingement. Because remember, when we work a horse, and for those of you who've done like bum tucks and that,
Yes,
where you
really
scratch
good
the horse, see the
exercise,
sides
yeah.
of its tail,
Yeah, and-
you'll see it roll up.
Yeah.
And you'll see that whole area expand.
Yeah.
And then the thing you have
It's amazing how the ribs, actually, that whole thoracic
Yeah, so
thing.
it's the chain.
Yeah, it's really...
it's that entire muscle chain engagement.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening every stride. Those legs are swinging under.
Unless you're blocking it, and
you
then
know,
they can't.
another thing to add to that is it a stallion? Is it naturally bigger there because of its testosterone?
Well, and it's development, you know.
I'll tell you about it.
Is it a mare? Has she just had a foal? Because again, that same muscle will be bigger currently due to having.
And I think the thing you have to look at is, in an ideal world, a horse expands half a width fitting up during exercise.
Correct.
Remember, muscles
That is
retain
really
water during
interesting.
exercise.
Okay.
You'll know from going to the gym so much, Georgie.
So much. Yes, of course. Tell me more about this,
Pump it.
you know.